The Box Seat, brought to you by our stable of sponsors: Woodland Stud, New Zealand Bloodstock Standardbred, Bracken Farms, Stonewall Stud, IRT, it's your horse and our passion, Australasian Wide Garrard's Horse and Hound, Rakiro Racing Stables, Lincoln Farms, the clubs Alexandra Park, Cambridge Raceway, Ashburton Trotting Club, Addington Raceway and Harness Racing New Zealand. Hi everyone, welcome to the final show of 2021 for your Box Seat. Yes, brought to you by our stable of sponsors. A very big thank you to them and happy festive season, not only to them but to everyone who's tuned into the Box Seat in 2021. Michael Guerin's been a big part of that. Compliments of the season to you, Michael. We were just talking prior to recording the show about what day of the week it is, because it's a little bit like that at this time of year.
It sure is, Greg. Big hi to you, to everybody who hopefully, if you're not a harness racing person, you're having a bit of a holiday. I'm sure the harness racing people among us are not, because the racing continues day by day, Greg. It's been a lot of fun, a lot of information coming and going, some great stories out of the West Coast. We'll get to that later in the show, Greg. But with the revised calendar, it's actually the horses' birthday week, Gregory. A lot of people would forget that, of course. The horses all turn another year older coming up on this Saturday. So Friday night at Alexandra Park is their early birthday celebration. And I tell you what, Gregory, it's going to be a pretty good party.
Yeah, it certainly is, Michael. Group 1 action coming out of the park, of course. The first of 10 goes around 3 o'clock. So let's get into a preview, particularly around those feature races. The Dunstan Horse Feeds Sire Stakes is the first of those. And, well, the hot favourite right throughout has been True Fantasy. We'll get to her in a moment, because here's her biggest rival, Remember Me, getting the business done at Alexandra Park. Her second look round the track, Blair Orange in the bike. Look, the overall time wasn't very fast, but she got home in good sectionals, Michael, 57-1, and more importantly, she did it very comfortably. That's first rows in second position, so a strong performance once again from the Robert and Jenna Dunn trained pacer. But Remember Me, she's beautifully bred. She has a really good early gate speed, and she'll be looking to take on True Fantasy, who we will now have a look at, Michael, before we get you to assess this race. That's Laver in front. He's subsequently gone on and won the Ashburton Cup. We'll have a look at that a little bit later on. And to his inside there goes True Fantasy. So this is against the older horses, and although it says 2-year-old filly, we know she's a year older than that. Well, she would have been if it was the 1st of August. So a strong performance from her against a pacer very much in form in Laver. How do we marry up those two form lines, Michael? And now the barrier draws come out. Does it clearly favour True Fantasy? The book would certainly suggest that.
Gregory, there's no marriage to be had between those two form lines. One is exponentially stronger than the other. In fact, you could make the case that because she's not really two, but we're in this transition period, that might be the strongest 2-year-old filly performance in the history of New Zealand pacing. Now, I know she's not 2, but she is officially, so we have to play with that. You're talking about a horse who raced in the New Zealand Cup in Laver and has been an open class force, and she's coattailed him to about 2.5 lengths. That's never happened before with a 2-year-old filly. It would have happened extremely rarely with a 3-year-old filly under the old age system, particularly when Laver's gone on, as you said, to win the Ashburton Cup since. But he was a player in the Flying Stakes at Ashburton, which is a serious open class race. So True Fantasy's form is absolutely outstanding. And as good as that race was at Alexandra Park, and it will continue to be a strong form race heading forward, because Remember Me hit the line really strongly, and first rows and second is clearly a high class filly who needed the run. So there's lots of good form there. But you simply ask yourself, punters, would Remember Me or First Rows have got that close in that field against Laver and beaten Pace and Pride Home? And the answer is no. Not yet. Maybe in a year, maybe in 6 months, but they wouldn't have done it last week. So, Greg, True Fantasy, absolutely clear top pick. She's the best of these fillies on form so far. She was beaten at the Jewels and beaten on the merits at the end of a long campaign last time. But I think they've aimed at this race because that was at the end of a campaign where there had been quite a few big races and she had been really good in all of them, whereas this has been her target. There's been no other major races yet, so this has been the race she's been aimed at. When Mark Purdon and Hayden Cullen aim horses at races, Greg, at this level, I want to back them. Now, $1.60 is problematic because I don't want to tip anything else, Greg, particularly because Remember Me has drawn outside True Fantasy, as you said. But spoke to the Dun team, as have you today, and they're quite keen to lead on Dance Till Dawn. So that puts potentially her in front and Millwood Indy behind her. Lead trail, Alexandra Park, on a warm day, awfully, awfully hard to beat. So you may well be taking, maybe, True Fantasy sitting parked at $1.60 to win. Last time she tried that at Alexandra Park, Greg, she was actually beaten in the Harness Million. So it's an unusual race because I think everybody wants to back the same horse. The question is, are you willing to take $1.60? So I put that question to you.
No, I'm not, for the reasons you've just said, particularly around Millwood Indy, and I know it was a way lesser form race that she lined up in last time, but they don't often go that well at Alexandra Park first up, Michael. Got attacked in front, was able to sprint away from about the 500 metre mark, put nearly 10 lengths on them, Michael. This one's owned by Ronnie Dorr, that's Dorr Contracting, and Rakiro Racing, great supporters of our show, and it's a massive step up to Group 1 level, but I haven't seen one go like that for a wee while, and admittedly the field might be down, well, clearly down on the field that she's in against on New Year's Eve, but inside draw, getting the right sort of run, she's got to be a first four player.
100%. The marker pegs in these type of races at Alexandra Park have been enormously beneficial, particularly in the last 5 years. I'll tell you what's skewering this conversation, Greg, and it's actually really hard to get your head around, is the times that are being run in the north, in particular, at Alexandra Park in Cambridge. Summer arrived about a month ago and it got really hot and the tracks have got really dry and the times have gone just boom. So Franco and, Millwood Indy went 2:40 last time. And in harness racing in this country, people go, 2:40, that's fast for 2-2. And then you realise that True Fantasy could probably go 2:38 or even 2:37. Golden Goddess went 2:36 in this race 5 years ago. And because we think of 2:40 being fast or even 2:42 being fast, Greg, you go, wow, that's a good performance. And then you think, well, what would Laver go it in? So I think, like at Cambridge recently, Greg, we've seen nice enough horses, 2 win horses go 2:38. And because they're going so much quicker and the tracks are faster and the driving styles are different, those times are skewering our perceptions of wins. I think this will be a 2:38 race, Greg, if they make it that way. And I think True Fantasy is probably a 2:37 horse. And that's why she deserves to be $1.60. As I said, the question then comes back to, with the plethora of races we have coming up over the New Year period, do you want to take the $1.60? I think multi-bets might be the way to go, Gregory. People feel more comfortable taking odds on in a multi-bet situation. I think there's a couple of other good multis there we'll see during this preview segment of the show. But if you're a big punter and you want to go 4 figures at $1.60, you start saying to yourself, do I want to take that about a horse I believe may have to sit parked?
Yeah, 32nd running of the Dunstan Horse Feeds Sire Stakes, and of course Remember Me, looking to emulate what her mother Adore Me was able to do about 8 or 9 years ago. So that's the Group 1 on the 31st out of Alexandra Park. Another very good race is the Lincoln Farms Franklin Cup. One of the key lead-up races was the Summer Cup, and here's Hot and Treacherous in front, Michael, doing it really nicely for Maurice McKendry. Wide out BD Joe storms home. I thought he was equally as good, and what these two have this week is an advantage of 10 metres over their best rivals, and both of them are quite handy from the stand.
They are. So this result we're watching now was a field position result. Basically, Hot and Treacherous stepped to the lead. BD Joe was at the back of the field. That was the winning of the race. Reverse where they were in the running, and you probably reverse the result. They're very comparable horses, both horses who came through their 3-year-old seasons and peaked on Jules Day. Because of that, Greg, and we'll get to the 20-metre mark horses shortly, because of that, I think whoever wins the start out of these two has the better opportunity of potentially heading forward. I think they're both good front-running horses. We saw BD Joe win on Jules Day, win in front, and that's crucial. So the standing start, absolutely crucial. There's no gimme they would get the lead because a horse like Steal the Show, who's in front of them, obviously placed in the New Zealand Cup or placed 4th. So I think the standing start gives one of them a tactical advantage over the other, and I like them both. I think at the $7 each of 2, you can back both those horses, Greg, and you're getting 3.5 for the bracket. Then we go back to the 20-metre horses, Greg, and this is really interesting because Krug might be the best horse in the race. He might be. Let's look at his video here. This is Krug at the trials recently, Greg, at Ashburton, the Chertsey trials there. And look, he's extremely strong in this, Greg, beating a Cooter. But his standing start manners this season haven't done a lot for me. And when he's been a big spoilt brat, he's really got it wrong. So I'm not saying he'll miss away this week. The 2700 at Alexandra Park on the back straight is a good place to step from. But I also don't know, after the Jules, Gregory, whether he's clearly and dominantly better than BD Joe and Hot and Treacherous. I would have said 10 months ago he was. And I would have said maybe the horse who turned up in the free-for-all last month was. But I'm just not sure, Greg. I'm not sure he can give them 5-length start. And there's the standing start concern. So the 2.7's a bit short for him, for me. And then we get to Better Twist, who we don't know from a standing start, and who won the mare's race last time, Greg, was half-handed the race. So there's some standing start question marks, Gregory, about those horses off the 20-metre mark. And then it could also be a race between Hot and Treacherous and BD Joe to get to the more dominant position from the 10-metre mark. I think it's a good, old-fashioned handicap race like we used to have in the Franklin Cup 10 years ago, maybe minus some open class stars, Greg, but I love the race because I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I had a really good chat to Crandall Getty last night and just got where Krug's at. You saw him beating a Cooter there. We know the talent that he is, and they did slip home in really good sectionals. He said he's definitely gone to the next level. They hoped he would. His junior free-for-all was excellent and his free-for-all run great. He said he's travelled up there beautifully. It's not going to be easy for him because he's going to have to come around the field. And the same scenario is for Better Twist. Therefore, I'm with you. I'm split betting on the 2 off the 10 metres, Hot and Treacherous and BD Joe, hoping that one of them does find the front and will be incredibly hard to run down. Better Twist also starts from 1 off 20 metres. It's her first go from a stand, and yes, she got handed the Queen of Hearts and did it beautifully. So when we have a look at this market, $7 a pair for Hot and Treacherous and, of course, BD Joe. Off the front, you've got Steal the Show around $12. I'm not convinced about him, Alexandra Park, right-handed way of going. And one question I've got for you of those off the front, Michael, is Kango and where he's at, and is he in the right sort of form to be winning a race like this? I would suggest not. What about you?
I don't think so. Second up after a run at Cambridge last week where nothing went his way. There was a leaders race and they went very hard off the front. So willing to forgive that, but it wasn't good enough to beat the Krugs and the Better Twists of the world. Better Twist is in a very tricky position here, Gregory. Like, she's a horse who races enormously better on the speed, and I'll be stunned, even with Mark Purdon in the bike, if she can get around to get to the front. I'll be completely stunned. And I don't want to back her any time she's not in front. That's not slagging her, but it's her biggest weapon. It's just those rolling sectionals. So, great race. Looking forward to it. As I said, I'm happy with the split bet only because it takes a lot to convince me, Gregory, to be backing back markers in any race at Alexandra Park. I don't mind Temporale in a weak 2,200 metre trot doing it, but I don't want to be doing it against the future stars of the industry, Greg. And one little side note here. All the horses we spoke about there, more or less, of the favourites are 3-year-olds. And I don't think anybody saw this coming. When they restructured the calendar and put this race here, and next year the Derby is a on the verge of this race. I don't think anybody saw it attracting basically no open class horses, excuse me, no open class horses, and having a whole bunch of 3-year-olds who turn 4 the next day. So where the Franklin Cup ends up as a target race for these horses when the Derby changes next year, Greg, is going to be very interesting.
Yeah, it certainly is. 65th running of the Lincoln Farms Franklin Cup, and a terrific edition of that it will be. Speaking of excellent horses, we know what Bolt for Brilliance is capable of. Here he was back in winning form at Alexandra Park. Lines up this week in the Majestic Horse Floats Green Lane Cup. Again, in front, extremely hard to beat. He's back with his old mate Temporale off 30 metres. 2,700. There's a few horses off the front, Michael, capable, that's Temporale to his inside by the way, of running a pretty handy time. If they go 3:27 or the like, 28, Michael, it won't be easy for these back markers, but they have the class factor.
Yeah, and the small field's a big help, Gregory. I think Tony Hurley was a bit cheeky in this race. He actually chucked him in without a trial, and he wasn't screwed down by any means, or without, really having him where he needed him to be. And he got away with it. And I think he'll be significantly better this week, Greg. I think he'll be 2 or 3 lengths better. He's a funny horse, Bolt for Brilliance, because he can disconnect from a field and be a bit lazy in his gait. But I think Temporale being back there with him gives him a horse to pair up with, whether he ends up in front of him or Temporale ends up in front of him, one way or the other. Here is Temporale just doing Temporale-like things. He's just too good for these horses, Greg. Week in, week out, he just is too good for this bunch of horses who race at Alexandra Park, the Invictuses and the Massive Metros and Andover and those type of horses. But most of the time, Bolt for Brilliance races him, Greg. He's also too good for him. The other thing which helps is it's a staggered handicap, so there is a front line, but there's also a 15-metre mark. And that means it's not a case of Bolt for Brilliance and Temporale getting disconnected and having to chase by themselves. I think they'll get towed into a 3 or 4 back on the outer type situation, Greg, without needing to do too much. They'll need to run to get there, but it's not like they're going to be 10 lengths off the back of the second or third last horse. So we talked about the multi. You could make a case that if you back True Fantasy in the multi into Bolt for Brilliance, you're getting the 2 best horses in the race and the 2 most proven Group 1 horses in the race, Greg. So that's a multi I think a lot of people, some of our galloping viewers, may want to take, Greg. The other bit of news out of this race, Gregory, of course, is that Sunday Sun was going to be in this race. Then they changed tack. And now it sounds, Gregory, like he may not be coming up to Auckland at all until February. So big changes there for Sunday Sun, and the announcement coming out from Team Dun or Diamond Racing that he won't be heading to the Great Southern Star. So some disappointed Australian trotting fans, Greg, and some very happy other fans. Why am I telling you this in the middle of this preview? Because I would suggest there's more chance now that maybe a Bolt for Brilliance could go, Gregory. Not saying he will go. I think Tony Hurley, he would like to go with the horse, and that's probably unlikely with the quarantine restrictions. But they do have options like Nathan Purdon or Josh Dickey. They could send the horse to over there. So, yeah, maybe a sneaky little chance. Bolt for Brilliance's chances of going to Victoria have improved overnight.
Yeah, disappointing, I suppose, from an Auckland point of view that Sunday Sun's not there, but from a Southland harness point of view, he now lines up in the free-for-all at Omakau on the 2nd. He'll go to Northern Southland as well, then possibly Addington Raceway or the Lyell Creek at Auckland. So, yeah, you're still going to get to see him, just in delay, but we won't get to see him in Australia. And you can't blame the Duns. They could end up in a situation like Ray Green's found himself with Copy That, and that if the horse gets injured or something doesn't quite work out there, you get stuck in Australia, as in John Dunn getting stuck there, and that wouldn't be ideal either.
Well,
so,
Greg, also it means that anybody going there is going to have to send their horse.
Yep.
Nobody
you can't go with it.
No, nobody's going to go to Australia and not come back till March. Now,
No.
there's far bigger things going on with COVID and Omicron than harness racing. We understand that. But the sales are in February, and that's where you buy next year's horses and the year after's horses. So you can't be disappearing for that time. Also, the Harness Million Night, which you mentioned, the Lyell Creek, Sunday Sun could come up for that. That's on February the 12th. So if you want to race Hunter Cup weekend, you cannot race that next weekend.
No.
Now, I was going to go over there to do some work, and I couldn't have got back for the sales at Karaka, and that made me really conflicted. Now, I can't go now, Greg, and I'm comfortable with that for those reasons. John Dunn obviously is running a massive stable, so they made the right decision. It's disappointing for the race, but there's enough good races here on the back end of the season, Greg, or the back end of the what would have been the season, that he'll be fine. So great for Omakau. Omakau's had a couple of really tough years, Greg, with the Ricky May incident, the weather last year. I want
them to have a great day. Yeah.
I want them to have a great day too. And hey, let's be honest, anybody who wasn't going to be watching Omakau will now watch because Sunday Sun's there.
Yep. So therefore, just on the back of that conversation, $1.40, yes, Bolt for Brilliance.
Again, I don't want to be taking a big bet on him to win at that level, but I'm more than comfortable saying if I'm spending $100 for the day, and I realise not everybody can, I'm more than happy to say I'm going to have a $50 all-upper. True Fantasy and Bolt for Brilliance, and if they both win and the good horses win for the day, Greg, I've got more money in my account, and then I can play around and waste my other $50 if you're that way inclined. Of course, bet responsibly and don't try to waste any of it.
No, exactly. Let's go to the Northern Juvenile Classic and Mr. Ibiza. Well, he was superb last time, getting the front, dominating from the top end. A couple of good runs in behind Michael, but I'm picking Todd Mitchell to be looking for something similar here, pressing forward, and if he's able to do so, he'll be right in this again.
Look, we bolted him, Greg. So why wouldn't you try the same sort of tactics? And it's not sure they'll come off. Depends how Chimichurri gets off the gate and whether he behaves himself this week. Depends on whether Major Perry and Montana DJ are deemed to be fitter, as you would expect, and therefore they get involved early on. But you're right, it's hard to go past him as the logical bet in the race because he beat most of these horses just a couple of weeks ago. So, look, I think he's a pretty decent horse. His size stakes form leading into the heats, even though he didn't go to the final, was really strong. Not sure he's top pick, Greg. He's one of the ones who's in the mix. I'll be happy to sort of maybe play around with this market once I've thought about it a bit more and spoken to some trainers for our jobs at the Herald and Harness Race in New Zealand and tried to work out who's thinking what about the race. I do think Major Perry's a pretty good horse, and I would think he would improve from that run. So he might be the horse who threatens the most.
Yeah, Chimichurri certainly holds the key to Mr. Ibiza's chances because he just got it wrong after a couple of 100 metres last time, but he has very good early speed, and if he is able to use that, then it might put Mr. Ibiza in a bit more of a tough position there. Michael, that's a look at 4 of the features. There's some good undercard races as well, one of which you've found your best bet, which we'll find out later on in the show. Yeah,
look, it's been a tricky time for the Auckland Trotting Club, Greg, because there's a couple, for example, the maiden trots there, they're $12,000. Now, in the old days, this meeting was a premiere and it had that oomphy, big feeling to it where South Island horses were coming up for the support races. And we're still getting our heads around the fact that the meeting is no longer that. It's a smaller meeting. So they've had smaller fields because it's, for the support races, Greg, it's more or less a normal Friday night meeting. I think it's a really good meeting. I think it's starting at the right time and the races are turning around quite quickly. But there's a lot of $2 to $3 type favourites, Greg, and maybe even some odds-on horses. It'll be a big day for the multi-players, a big day for the Gallops viewers who will get involved because a lot of them will be at home waiting for the next day at Ellerslie, Greg. So, I think it's a good day for the multi-players. We'll try and find 4 or 5 of those for you, but the most obvious 2 are the ones we mentioned already.
Yep, for sure. 3 o'clock kicks things off there on New Year's Eve out of Alexandra Park. Time for us to take a short break here on your Box Eat. When we come back, we'll have a look at some of the wonderful racing that's been happening here in Aotearoa in the last 7 days. Welcome back into your box seat, brought to you by our stable of sponsors, many of which are preparing their yearlings for the New Zealand Bloodstock Standardbred sale. Looking forward to that. Go to nzb.co.nz Standardbred and have a look and look through the catalogue, and if you want one in your hands, which so many people like to have, get a hold of Rachel Deegan and the team there. I'm sure they will send you one out. Let's go back and have a look at some of the racing that's been happening. Pre-Christmas we went to Ashburton. It was midweek. Here was Laver in front, Michael. Overall time for this track, not fast. The Rakaya C cleaning Ashburton Cup, they went just over 4 minutes. Home in 54 and 27 won. When he's in this sort of mood, Jared O'Reilly back in the bike, they just couldn't catch him, Michael.
We all saw this coming, Greg, during Cup Week. Once he was able to get away from the Copy That's and the Self-Assureds and the South Coast Ardents, he was just going to bully his way to the front in most races and be too good. And that's the respect he earned, Gregory. He earned that in the Ashburton Flying Stakes. He's turning into a serious open class horse, and when you think of the fact that Copy That is now sadly out for the season, South Coast Ardent, I doubt, will turn up back in the South Island anytime soon, Greg. He's going to be awfully hard to beat in any race down there, because probably Self-Assured's the only horse in the South Island he would need to be scared of. He heads to Omakau, Greg, I believe, on right. Sunday, and you would think if he managed to get the front again around Omakau, man, he'd be hard to beat.
Yeah, mobile 2,000 metres down there. He's come up with barrier number 5. He's up against Plutonium Lady, who was the Winton Cup winner, Summer Cup winner there, and ran second behind Johnny Mack in the Gore Cup. Ultra Wise Guy's come up with barrier 3, Michael. I'll get your comments on him shortly. Vintage Cheddar out of the 6, One Change is first up for Amber Hoffman out of the 7, and Classy Brigade starts from the outside at a track and a race that he's already been successful in. Ultra Wise Guy should have enough early speed to get across. Sitting on the back of Laver, it could be a good battle, that.
Yeah, that's if they choose to hand up. Around Omakau, which races, I know it's a bigger track, but it races small because they get, on a hot day there, they get charging in front, and it's just so hard to come from back in the field. You might consider rolling the dice if you get to the first bend with the head of steam up and keeping on going. But you're right, if Laver is in front of him, he might get him for speed. It'd be tempting to stay in front. It's going to be an excellent race. By the way, well done to Amber Hoffman getting One Change. She's a very forgotten horse, but a very good horse, and good to see her getting her chance with a Group 1 horse like him. So interested to see how he progresses for her in coming months, Greg. But great circuit down there. Looking forward to the circuit with that and Northern Southland, and these good races turn up all the time, Greg. One thing about them is there's no place for the faint-hearted. When you head down to the south, they absolutely roll, and they go times where you just go, how did they go that fast? And they'll back up and do it again. So looking forward to the circuit. Good luck to the guys and girls at Omakau this week, because, as I said, it's been a tough couple of years for them.
It has been, yeah. 16 race winner at One Change and over $600,000. So, yeah, good luck to Amber there. The Ranfurly Transport Limited RD Petroleum feature race down there for $30,000. Let's go to Cambridge in the Christmas Cup, and this was an upset, Michael, but again a horse in front on the markers. Like Laver, this was win number 8 for American Me. This with Garrard's Horse and Hound, and well, beautifully rated in front by Jay Abernathy. Dead set, bolted in.
Huge gaps here, Greg. It looked like they went faster than they did. They went 3:23, but big effort this from Doug Gale. I mean, Doug was training in Helensville for a long time, and that was a long time ago. And it's not easy to be training down in the CD, first of all, to get owners, Greg. But secondly, yes, you can win races at Manawatu, and you can win races at some of the grass tracks down there, but it's a lot harder to come north and beat people who are training in better facilities against more regularly good company. So good on Doug. Going to be his biggest win, in north of the bottom half of the North Island for quite some time, Greg. And yeah, American Me, the way it's gone, he's probably going to be a factor in this Country Cups Championship. Really important punting indicator, Greg, watching that race. Like the better horses in the race, the Kangos and the Last Tangos and Heavens, Greg, they couldn't get into it. And that's going to happen a lot during this Country Cups Championship. These horses who get fit and hard and run in front, Greg, Laver being another one at Ashburton, I just don't want to be betting against them. So lesson learned there for the punters who backed the back markers last week.
Michael, while we're talking about Cambridge, of course, the race, which we talked a lot about on last week's show, the market out for that, and I know what you're going to say to me, you're silly to bet into that market at the moment, but the TAB have put one out, so we need to have a chat about it. And the obvious discussion point being Copy That. He's a $4.60 second favourite, or third favourite, because Expensive Ego and Self Assured at $4. And Matthew Peden and the team have now put Akuta in at $6. If you were a betting man, and we all know that you are, what do you think the percentages would be around Akuta starting in this race?
Well, let's go through that piece by piece. There's a lot to discuss there. The market is currently suspended.
Yep.
Copy That is now out, obviously. Copy That is out for the season. The New Zealand Cup winner kicked a rail in Victoria on Sunday, and he has a hairline fracture and a splint bone. So the prognosis is good that he will be able to return to the track, but we won't see him again for what used to be this season, but for the next campaign, through until, next August, September. That's really sad, and I feel for Ray Green, who, as you said, is now stuck in Victoria, and for Merthen, the team. This would have been a target race for him. So he's in the market. They need to recalibrate this market. Akuta, I would suggest, won't start Gregory, even though he would get barrier 1, and I think his connections are keen to look at maybe getting a slot, but he wouldn't have, I think, the experience to use barrier 1. He wouldn't have the natural gate speed to use barrier 1, and therefore it wouldn't be as big an advantage to him as it was to a horse like Krug and the Rising Sun last year, or this year, in Queensland. So maybe worth rolling the dice. They can make that decision when they see how he progresses through races in the next couple of months. The horse who's not on the market who should be, and the bookies, I don't know how they left this horse out, is King of Swing. Now, I spoke to Luke McCarthy about him. Expensive Ego is his stablemate. I would suggest King of Swing has a better chance of coming to the race than Expensive Ego. So the McCarthy people, their team, aren't looking to buy a slot, but they are looking, post Miracle Mile, to do business with somebody who does buy a slot, and that's part of the race. Don't forget, an entity, a business, could buy a slot and then get a horse into that. King of Swing will be in his last campaign. He's going to be retired to stud next year, and they don't want to race him in Queensland because it's getting too close to letting him down for a stud career. So Luke McCarthy said to me, great, if it all pans out and we go, well, Miracle Mile time, I want to go to the race, the Argyle Caliente, and then the Auckland Cup. Now, that'd be awesome. So the race is very much on their radar, but more so with King of Swing than Expensive Ego. So I think the TAB need to recalibrate this market. They've got it wrong, and that's cool. I'm glad they opened it, but it's not right at the moment. And then Self Assured's the obvious horse, Greg, who will be set for that race now, will be in that market, and then the question is whether All Stars Racing buy a slot, Greg, because they'll have a horse every year, and that would mean they could deal with their own owners, as Chris Waller did for the Everest. So that's a mini update. Just interest from overseas. There has been quite a bit. There's been some very serious declarations of interest in the race from people who you would expect to be able to get a slot and are serious players. So I'm absolutely certain the race will sell out, Greg. There's no doubts about that. Those people who are interested should get involved. Now, a couple of New Zealand's biggest stables have expressed interest in the race, Greg, and there has been talk about, from an Australian-based owner base, getting an American horse to come out who may potentially have a stud career here and racing him through that series of races to see if they can set him up for a stud career here or in Australia. So far, a week after the announcement of the race, Greg, all the indicators incredibly positive, with the one negative, of course, of Copy That getting injured.
Yeah, so many factors in play, permutations that are likely to unfold over the month that we're away, but we'll certainly update you when we return on about the 25th of January. One of the great meetings, traditional meetings, is Westport on Boxing Day, and a race that's sought after by a lot of people is the Pulse Energy Westport Cup. Bob Butt's had 2 starters in it, Michael, now for 2 wins. So his colours to the fore again with a horse called Kiwi X Factor here. Part owned by Gavin Smith, who's in the bike, gets up to beat Passion and Power and company in that, and did it in good style. Excellent win from Kiwi X Factor. 4:13 the overall time. Like I mentioned, Gavin Smith's in the ownership, as are Hamish Scott and Dr. Kim Lawson. Out of a good Kiwi chick, she won 4 races. This is the Kiwi Ingenuity family, and beautifully placed in this race. Got an excellent run in transit. Was able to beat Homebush Lad in Passion and Power, and Gavin was pretty stoked with that.
Yeah, it's a funny race, the Westport Cup, because I think it's only worth 20 grand, Greg, but lots of people want to win it. I would love to win it, being an ex-West Coaster. So, I thought it was a typical Westport Cup. You needed to be handy to the speed, you needed grass track form, just played out as it does every year with the horses who get too far back in the field, Greg, unable to make any ground. That changed for the second day because obviously it got old style wet as it can on the West Coast, and it was a different type of race. It was very much a survival of the fittest rather than a survival of the fastest as it was on the first day.
Yeah, we'll get to that one very shortly, but you mentioned it was a typical Westport Cup. Well, this typically happens as well. Paul Nairn goes across the Alps and delivers. Here's Masterly, who was very strong, was to be driven by David Butt, but there was an unfortunate road accident through the Arthur's Pass and Davey couldn't get there, so P. Nairn sat in the bike, very capable replacement, and he was excellent, Masterly. And here was a unique feat, Michael, Out of My Way, the dual harness million winner, getting the business done with the hopples on, the first ever pacing winner for P. Nairn.
This is a remarkable story. So we'll get to Masterly in a second, but he's obviously a pretty decent horse. So Paul had Out of My Way, who had a hock injury or hock unsoundness, and decided to put the hopples on him to see if it could take different pressure on his body and he'd be fine. So here he is, he wins on the first day. Here he is winning on the second day, and remarkably, he's been able to win both. So here's Masterly winning on the second day. So this is Masterly backing up with the double. But we're talking more about Out of My Way. Out of My Way has won 2 races pacing. Now, on Thursday, they head to Reefton. Here's the second part of that double. And Out of My Way is nominated for the Reefton Cup and the main trot, Greg. And ironically, he'll be favourite in the main trot. And Paul is undecided as to yet what he'll do, Greg. Well, I've never, ever heard of this in the time I've been in harness racing. I know it happened in the old days. I know that there's stories about people in the 50s who would take horse and pace it in one race and trot it into another. And it has happened since, but not with horses who are going to be favourite, Greg. So he's in the last race on Thursday, Out of My Way, and he could go back to trotting after pacing for the last 4 days. And he would be favourite, Greg, to win, and you would back him to win. And he could start in the Reefton Cup as only his third start as a pacer, and he would probably be about $6 there. So Paul suggesting he may start him in the trot. Only Paul. Paul's the only person I know who would try this, Greg. With Masterly, technically he's 2, he'll turn 3 on Saturday. He doesn't go to Reefton. He is going to probably go home, and I would suggest, Greg, be some sort of force in the 3-year-old trots. But that Out of My Way story, Greg, that's time machine stuff. That used to happen 50 years ago. If he happens to win the trot on Thursday, I'm going to get messages from people in Australia saying, is that the same horse? Because they just can't believe this sort of stuff happens in this part of the world, and to be honest, Greg, either can I.
A couple other things we need to discuss. P. Nairn's hat as he went back with Blair Orange with Out of My Way, right up there with some of the best fashion that he's ever had. More importantly though, Michael, David Butt drove Masterly, spoke to him this morning, that's it, comprende, done. He has finished driving. He won't be renewing his licence. When you think about David Butt and some of the great horses he's driven, Call Me Now springs to mind, Stig springs to mind, Pay Me Christian won a Sire Stakes and a Derby. I think he's won about 15 or 16 domestic Group 1s. Horses like Bondi, who he took to Australia. He drove over 1,100 winners, drove in 8,000 races, and 10 or so years ago, and of course with his wife Catherine, they won a couple of premierships. He was one of the go-to people for Group 1 drives, one of the most laid-back characters in the game and one of the most talented sitting in the bike. So whilst I'm sad to hear that that'll be his last drive, gee, he's brought us some thrills.
So hold on. He went to the coast to have a couple of jars with his mates, drove Masterly to win his last race, and then he hung up the boots.
He was going to drive him the first day, just wanted to go out on a winning note, and Paul said, well, I've got a winner for you, this is it. But he couldn't get there due to that pretty ordinary accident. So then he drives him the second day. What's more, his good friend, the stewards, managed to get him for 500 for excessive whip use. So on his last drive, he's driven a winner, he's finished, and it cost him 500.
It's beautiful. That's the most David Butt story ever. The only part of me better is if he argued with the stewards while he was chewing gum afterwards, Greg.
Yeah.
Look, a wonderful driver, incredibly talented man. Obviously, Catherine has kept him under control and been a huge part of the barn heading forward. But from the driving point of view, he drove Bondi to win a Hunter Cup. That's top-level stuff for a guy who didn't spend a lot of time in Australia. Call Me Now, as you said, above the stars. Just so many wonderful horses. Great judge of pace. I sort of relate him to Chris Johnson as a harness racing version of that. Very laid back, very laconic, didn't let too much upset him, but just a natural horseman. That's great. I hadn't known that, Greg, so thank you for telling me. I'm sure lots of our viewers didn't know it either. So, yep, Davey will leave us with some incredible memories. And, yeah, I know that him and Catherine have set up a great business out there at Woodend, so good luck to them. It's been a hell of a ride following his incredible fortunes over about 30 years.
Yeah, and their Birchbrook breeding operation, he said they've still got about 6 or 7 mares, so they've got yearlings and foals, and he said, we'll be continuing on, we'll just put them in Bob's colours, and yeah, we're going to have plenty of horses to the races, hopefully, so we're certainly not losing the David and Catherine Butt ability. They just won't be out there in the public arena in terms of training and driving. Let's go to the Gore Cup. This was an outstanding drive from Blair Orange on Johnny Mack, beating Plutonium Lady. You talk about getting field position. He started behind Plutonium Lady, but managed to get out in front and got Nathan Williamson to sit parked and then dashed away. This was a big win for Tyler Dew. He looks after the Michael House team in the south. Unfortunately, earlier in the month, he lost his father, Mark, who was a massive fan of this horse and obviously of Tyler. So a special win. But Johnny Mack by Mark 3 out of Carabella, so he's got plenty on his side breeding-wise, and the 9th career win for Johnny Mack. But he was pretty dominant there in the finish, Michael.
Yeah, strong to the line. It's going to get a bit tougher, those country cups down there now, because a lot of the bigger guns are turning up and he's getting up in the grades. But well done to Tyler. So commiserations on the loss of your father. But yeah, that'd be a very proud moment. Country cups, Greg, have a funny effect on people. They're not worth a lot more than lots of other races, but people love winning them, so good on Tyler for producing that for everybody involved.
We've already seen some of the footage out of the second day at Westport. Here's last of the Mohicans, getting it done in the hands of Ricky May. It's been a really good carnival for them, although testing yesterday. Beats Homebush Lad, who was so brave on the first day and just getting beaten here, but last of the Mohicans. Those colours, that combination, Lawrence Hanrahan and Ricky May, have been on that circuit on several occasions, Michael, including winning the West Coast bonus, which is obviously no longer in play. But last of the Mohicans. Lawrence got caught up in that accident as well. He drives the horse ambulance to all of the major race meetings, or all of the race meetings in the Canterbury region. Had to turn around from Arthur's Pass, go back and through the Lewis, so it was an arduous trip on day number 1, but got rewarded there, Michael. And last of the Mohicans have been unlucky in his previous 2 runs at Addington.
Tell you what, Greg, turning the horse ambulance around on Arthur's Pass would be a lot of fun.
No.
I've been up the wrong way of Arthur's Pass a few times, and man, it's a tricky place to go back around to the Lewis. So look, a lot of people did that. I think Matt Cross did something similar as well. So look, congratulations to everybody who's made that haul. Lawrence is obviously a very good trainer. I didn't think this horse would cop a wet grass track. Being an Auckland reactor, I thought he might dig his toes in a bit. Good on him. He's in the Reefton Cup on Thursday, so pretty decent type of a horse. The one thing I would say about the horses who go to the coast, Greg, it's awfully hard to carry the form on when you get back, because you get those rating points and then you go back to Addington for a different type of racing. I think last of the Mohicans is one horse who might be able to make that jump back, Greg. We've seen some horses handle it in recent years, but yeah, good effort from Lawrence on a lot of fronts there to have that winner. And that was old school, Greg. Again, time machine stuff. That was going back to 30 years ago, and Super Trooper and those type of horses, Greg. They were coming home in 71 seconds for the last 800 in some of those races on Tuesday.
Yeah, it's that long ago, Michael. It's Surprise Trooper, but you nearly got it.
Oh, nearly got him. Nearly got him. I was actually going to say. I was going to say Boots, Gregory, because I was there the day that Boots, driven by Colin DeFilippi, it was the second day at Westport, and it was so wet he went to the outside rail in the first race on the card, and everybody thought, "What is he doing?" And he won by about 50 metres.
Got the business done.
And everybody went to the same place. They didn't make it all the way to the outside rail this time, Greg, but they got halfway there.
Yeah, they did. They did. So Reefton is only a day or so away, and that $20,000 cup last, the Mohican starts off the back mark. High Flying Harry, who was excellent first day, won the second day. Kiwi X Factor, they're all in it, and we talked about Out of My Way as well. Tasgirl Bromac, last start winner at Addington, good standing start exponent. Now, often, Michael, you see a horse just dropped in there that missed the Westport circuit, can bob up and win a race like this. Homebush Lad would be a deserved victor after running second on the first 2 days, but gee, those horses backing up from that track into Reefton, it's got to be tough going.
Standing starts are crucial, Greg, at Reefton. I'm not sure there's a more leader bias track in the country because it's so flat and it's so tight. It's even worse for the gallopers. It's great fun, don't get me wrong. It's enormously great fun. I love the Reefton meeting. It's actually my birthday every year, and I would always love to go as a birthday present, but I won't be doing that. It'll be a lot of fun there tomorrow. It's the one harness racing meeting in the South, Greg, I always have a bet at. Regardless if I like a horse, I will be betting there tomorrow. I do it every year for Reefton because of the emotional attachment to it. So just hoping the weather's improved there, although often the weather at Westport and Reefton is two different things, which is incredibly odd because they're quite close together.
You're not wrong. The town of Light, of course, where the great race caller, Rion Murtha, grew up there in Reefton. Just going back to that first day at Westport, the only figures that I have seen, 1.4 million they did off course, which was excellent going, Michael. And when you consider it's on trackside too, doesn't get a whole lot of bells and whistles. It just shows you the people that love their harness racing still get involved.
Well, Greg, also shows you something very important. You can't close all the harness racing tracks or the galloping tracks in the regions. Now, this was never a track that was going to be closed, Westport, so that's good. But, you know, a couple of years ago, people were suggesting we get rid of that, we get rid of that, and get rid of that. Well, clearly you don't need to. People who go to Westport, like a David Butt going for a couple of drives, they go there, Greg, because it's their holiday, and they're happy to cop the $1,000 in float fares or whatever. They don't care. If they did care, they wouldn't go. It's important we don't lose sight of that. You know, it's important, Greg, that yes, we rationalise some tracks and get rid of some things that don't work for harness racing, but it's also important that we don't let people who live in cities make all those decisions because quite often they've never been there and they simply don't know.
No, correct. And well said. And don't forget about our Christmas crackers too. We have been sending them out on a regular basis via Twitter, but we had those on our pre-Christmas show, and straight away Craig Thornley came up with a winner in Franco Macho, and we actually lobbed the Quinella with himself there with Bob Butt too. So yeah, big thank you to our trainers and drivers providing us with that information. A young man doing some terrific things in the bike is Mark Hurrell, and as part of our Harness Racing New Zealand young person profile this week, we had a chat to him about his success and looking forward as well. Mark, why harness racing?
Just love of the horse, love of the racing. Just from since I was a young kid, I just really loved it and just had a passion, so just got into it. Yeah.
Mark, is that a family background? Is there a bit of lineage involved there?
Yeah, my dad used to own horses with Henderson Hunter probably 20, 30 years ago. So my dad's always been great mates with them for a long time. So that's where it sort of stemmed from.
Win number one. It ain't the money.
Yeah, it's a wee while ago now, but he's still going good in Queensland actually. But it's good for meeting my first winner with Fallon the Vicar. He's pretty loyal to me for a start. So he's not a bad horse.
What about some of the other trainers that have helped you out? And there's been quite a few. You've driven for a lot of stables, people like Amber Hoffman, Snow McClellan, up here Regan Todd, Craig Ferguson has provided you with a few wins. So it's been spread around, isn't it?
Yeah, it has been, yeah. Probably Sid Breen's probably been my biggest supporter. We've won a few country cups together with Sagwitch, and yeah, Amber was really good to me. I worked there for a year and we got like 20 winners or something for that year. So no, I've had some loyal people support me and I can't be more thankful.
Yeah, and of course Nathan Williamson, he's provided you with a few too. So you're up over 100 wins. So what's Mark Hurrell want to achieve in the remaining time as a junior, but also going forward?
Yeah, always like everyone wants to win a premiership, but Sarah Riley's pretty good at the moment, so it's hard going. But eventually I'll probably take my trainer's license out at the start of the new season and maybe try and train one or two myself. But yeah, just drive as many as I can and hopefully drive as long as I can, so see how we go.
Right, you've done a pretty good job so far. Thanks so much for your time and all the best.
Yeah, thanks, Greg.
Welcome back into your box seat in the home straight for 2021. Let's go straight and have a look at the hits and misses brought to you by the TAB each and every week. Back to Ashburton, Maybelline, $1,309. Well played there, as was the bet on Might Be Me. Only got there by a small margin, but Blair Orange getting that done, $4.20. Decent play there. Masterly was heavily backed both days at Westport. Mark Dunnett was as well, 2.5 at $1.90. And Peregrine got there by the barest of margins at Gore. A few misses there, Michael. Haranya got beaten, probably off the back of me tipping it as the best bet of the week, 4,000 at $1.70. And High Flying Harry getting beaten on the first day. Hopefully that punter backed up and got involved the second day. But it's often difficult at this time of the year, Michael, to follow all of the form. If you get yourself a race book or the informant, and of course a race meeting's a couple of days later, particularly in the thoroughbreds, you can miss a race, Michael. You can miss a form line, so you've got to keep your wits about you.
Sorry, Gregory, I lost my train of thought when I realised somebody had 10,000 on Peregrine at 2.7.
Right.
That's one of the more staggering bets I have ever seen in the history of harness racing in this country. And I know it won, and it was actually very, very close. But
was it 2.7 or 1.7?
I don't know what it was. It was 2.7. It's a great bet. Bet of 2021, to be honest, but that's incredible on the grass.
It was 1.6. Oh, it was 2.7. It was 2. Gee, there you
Stop
go.
arguing with you, Gregory. I was on a diatribe.
I'm pleased you're paying attention, Michael.
I am paying attention. I watched the race. I've got nothing else to say, Greg. It's going to take me a couple of days to get over that.
Right, let's move on from that and talk about what's ahead for you. And Cameron Shaw's come up with the map for us. And like I said, there's so much racing at this time of year. We've mentioned Reefton, $20,000 Cup there, 11 races, and the first of those goes at 12.04. In fact, I think there's only 10, but that's probably not surprising given the tough conditions they had last time. Big evening it is, New Year's Eve, $150,000 Group 1. Dunstan Horse v Sire Stakes Fillies Championship. Excellent race, as is the Lincoln Farms Franklin Cup. Got the Green Lane Cup there, and of course the 2-year-old race 2. Rangiora race on New Year's Day. They haven't done that before. 10 races, 1:02 the start time there. Tauhara Nikau. It's the Wairarapa Country Cup meeting. That's on Sunday. The first of those, I think it's actually a bit earlier than that, about 10:30, and they might have half a dozen races there. Omakau, massive day for them. The McLarens, Ranfurly Transport, RD Petroleum, Free For All we talked about with the likes of Laver and Alta Wise Guy. The Galahad Trotters Cup there too, with Sunday Sun taking on the likes of the Dominator. Roxburgh, always a good meeting. 11 races there, just after 2 o'clock. So a later start on Tuesday. And then we go to Otaki for the Otaki Cup at 15,000 and 12,000, the Wellington Trotting Cup. And they are likely to start at 11 o'clock. They might end up with half a dozen races too. What's the one race you're looking forward to there, Michael? Because there is a stack of them to think about.
Oh, Alexandra Park, Greg, it's obviously just down the road from my house. It's a place which has had a huge role in my life. It's a changing situation there on many fronts. We'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the Franklin Cup. It's a good old-fashioned Franklin Cup handicap, Greg. Wouldn't be stunned if Krug won. Wouldn't be stunned if something off the front got in the trail and won. I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to make it fun. All
right, what about the Rakiro Racing best bets of the week for you? You're going to the park.
Yeah, I am. There's actually a trotter I really like who ran second fresh up. He's by Love You in the Derek Bull Barn, called Love To You. And yeah, I think it's a pretty decent type of horse. I'd be stunned if this wasn't a 5-race winning horse eventually. I'm not saying it's just going to turn up in Bolton, but yeah, it'll be winning races shortly, and it's not a very strong field, Greg.
You're also keen on the Honey Queen, I think, from memory too?
Yep, Honey Queen's my other bet of the day, but I thought she might be longer odds than she is. She's going to actually be probably shorter, so I'm sort of wavering around both of them, but she's the one I'm going to add to my multi with Bolt for Brilliance and True Fantasy. barrier one crucial for her there, and she should end up on the marker pegs, and then Tony Hurley will make the right choice.
All right, I'm going for barrier one, race number 4 at Omaka. Glory's Delight out of Fight for Glory in the very much informed Tony Barron barn, so I'm pretty keen on it. And I was talking to Bob Butt earlier today, and he said, I think Kelly's Delight can win down there, so there you go, you might want to put it in too. Michael, wish list for 2022. Mine is that the turnovers continue to be strong in harness racing, and therefore we can maintain and increase the return to the participants and of course the owners in the sport. What about for you?
I want to see the Auckland Trotting Club situation worked out. And it will be worked out. Some very smart people are working really hard on this. To surmise, obviously they built the apartments and they were done over by a developer who basically didn't do the job properly, and they did the right thing, and the Auckland Trotting Club made sure the apartments were done well, and they are done well. I've been in them, they're fantastic. So the idea was great, but it didn't work, and they've dug themselves into an enormous hole. Now, good people are working really hard to sell some land to get them out of that hole, and I believe the deals will be done that at least half that hole will be filled, Greg. And long term, they will get out of this. That will happen. So I want to see that continue to happen. I want to see Maro and his team supported, but also, Greg, they had the AGM recently where some members went there. Now, this damage has been done. They need to rally around now and support the club. And what they don't need to be doing is, in a meeting which is commercially sensitive, going outside that and telling people the figures. The reason I can't write a story about it, Greg, is because these figures are commercially sensitive. The media weren't allowed into that meeting, as they shouldn't be, because they're trying to fix the club up. They're not trying to save it. It's going to be saved. That's fine. It's going to be okay. But to then go leak that to people, if you're in that meeting and you're willing to leak the information for a club you're supposed to love, because why else would you be a member? That's cowardly. What I want, Greg, is to people to stop doing cowardly stuff. Do the right thing, be helping the club to become better and more stable and sustainable heading forward. If you don't love the club enough to do that, then revoke your membership and leave. That's what I feel, Greg, because that structure of going to meetings, talking about serious things, and then going outside the meeting and talking about them is not a person who loves harness racing and not a person who loves the club I love. So that's the sort of thing I want to see stop in harness racing, Greg. We've all got 2 feet. Stop shooting yourself in them.
Yeah, absolutely, Michael. For us, we're looking forward to 2022. Plenty of people wanting to put 2021 behind us, and I know in about 3.5 weeks' time we'll be back. We'll be previewing a great sales. New Zealand Bloodstock have put together a terrific catalogue. Good luck to all of the preparers, and the excitement only builds for those who've bred these horses and are about to put them through Karaka. Of course, with the Harness Million Night the night before on the 12th, Michael, and then down to Christchurch. 415 yearlings going through the ring, Michael, so there's plenty of opportunity for people to get involved. And when you start thinking about some of the money the race is going to bring to harness racing, but also those other races you talked up to about 8 or 9 million for the free-for-all, this is the year you want to be buying, because in 2 to 3 years' time, that money's coming to fruition.
The best open class horses in 2024, Greg, can race 10 times for around about $7 million. That's galloping like steak. So yeah, it's a time to buy. I haven't opened the Wicked catalogue yet, Gregory, because we know what happens when you do. So yes, I'm saving that for that rabbit hole for one quiet Tuesday night over January, I'm thinking.
All right, Michael, that's been a wrap on 2021. Thanks so much for your input throughout the year, and we will see you in around about 3.5 weeks' time.